So Pamela, I wanted to start with you and just kind of ask you to just kind of give us the background on the story and how you came to it and met Wash and Richard.
Well, I know Wash and Richard a long time. They're good friends with Todd Haynes, who's in the Killer Films family. And while we were making their second film, The Last of Robin Hood, they were telling me about Still Alice, which was a book that two really smart British producers, Lex Lutzis and James Brown, had optioned and just had the good sense to hire Wash and Rich to adapt. And that had happened before they even made the movie I was making with them at the time. You were involved and attached, and Julianne's loyal to us and had said, if this movie gets made in New York, I want Pam and Christine to produce it. So we all came together on the basis of this wonderful story with a great filmmaking team. And of course, for us, anything Julianne wants us to do, we're going to do. End of story.
We've known each other a long time.
What I love about this story is that in looking at this disease of Alzheimer's, it's taking the focus away from the family and the friends who experienced the loss, but actually putting it at the point of view of the person. Right. So I'm curious, what were your first impressions when you read that script?
I was absolutely blown away. That is very, very rare. I think generally when you read any movie or any study of a disease, it's always from the point of view of the caretaker. And this is the first that I had seen that was completely subjective. And it was fascinating. So I read the script and I went back and read Lisa Genova's book and was really struck by that, was the process. Because what I felt when I was reading the book is that I felt as if it were happening to me. And I think that's the strength of the story, and hopefully the strength of our movie, is that you can actually experience the loss begins to feel personal, because it is so incredibly subjective. And that was what I wanted to find in my research too. That thing we were just talking about outside, we were talking about the scene where Lydia says, "What does it feel like?" That was one of the things that I asked everybody in my research. And one of the things that I asked two of the women was, what is it about your disease that you would like me to represent? And a lot of what they said to me is in that speech, actually.
Anything different about working with these two as opposed to working with other two co-directors?
One of the things that I think that the misnomer about teams or about pairs is that people are going to have different agendas. And what they do have generally are different personalities and different approaches. And in the case of Wash and Rich, when we were working with Rich, he could no longer speak, so he was directing through an iPad. But what was amazing about him was how concise he was. Wash is much more. I don't know what I say. He's the more emotional of the pair, and Richard is the more intellectual. So sometimes Wash will be like, well, I don't know, and kind of all over here, and this feels this way, and Wash would just write something down that was very concise and very precise. So you had the best of both worlds.
So you were getting direction from both.
Oh yeah,
and it wasn't funneled through.
No. And even there's even a line where Alec's character, and they're all talking about Alice is fairly declined. They're talking about what are they going to do with her, where's she going to go? And I kind of have been sleeping, and I wake up and I say, it's hot in here. And Richard wrote that line on the spot because the line was initially like, what's for dinner or something. I said, it's going to get a laugh. And we don't want to get a laugh there. Right. So what could she say? What kind of observation? And Rich very quickly typed out, it's hot in here.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And the choice, because I think the book took place in Harvard, correct?
Yeah, Boston.
So, Boston. So curious about the creative choice to move it to New York.
Because I live here. Do you know?
Really, it's
we all live here.
Yeah, we live here, and what's the difference?
Yeah, what's the difference? Columbia, Harvard.
When you're making a film with limitations, you really have to examine every single choice. What is this bringing to the storytelling? Is this vital to the storytelling? And honestly, it boiled down to there was one thing vital to the storytelling. Julianne, let's make this as comfortable and as in service of this main character.
New York also has a tax incentive that is fantastic, significant. I've made so many little movies. Yes, Yay. Exactly. So for the last few years, I've been able to make these independent movies here at home, But what was interesting about translating it, because Rich and Wash and I would get on Skype and do the script, and in the translating of it, because I'm a New Yorker and they're in LA, we said, okay, so she's at Columbia. And so then Wash was like, so when she's running around Washington Square Park. I was like, no. I said, she's running uptown. And he's like, oh, and they have a brownstone in Brooklyn. I said, no. They're on 119th Street. And, so all that stuff, but all the stuff that we know about New York and how you live and where you are, and we all tried to put that, into the New York version. Yeah, Pinkberry. What you get, that's my order at Pinkberry.
Is that your order?
Blueberries and coconut, yeah.
And then, of course,
And specificity and behavior. And one of the things that I talked about with everybody is that I didn't want to do anything on screen that I hadn't actually seen in real life. So all of my actions, like all the physicality, the picking, the speech things, the anger, the reaching, everything I had actually seen. And that was very important to me, because whenever I didn't understand something, I thought, well, I can't portray this because I don't know that this has happened. And people were so remarkably generous when I spoke to them.
How much time did you use?
About 4 months. Yeah, I was working on Mockingjay actually, and then I was off in November because there was the period where they had dropped production on that, and I started working. And I worked November and December, January, February, then we started in March. Yeah.
Now, we have to talk about, the rest of the cast
Yes,
in this film.
please, yes.
I mean, this story just brings up so much about family dynamic and what happens when the family is faced with a crisis. So tell us about this.
Can I tell you about Alec?
Please do.
So Alec Baldwin and I had worked together on 30 Rock, and I really adore him, and I just think he's so talented. And every time somebody would send me a comedy, I would email Alec and say, do you want to do a comedy with me? There's this thing. And he would always very politely decline. He'd read it immediately and then call me up and say, can't do it, Jewel. No, I can't do it. And so the last time he did it, he said, don't you have a drama for me? And I said, well, actually, I do. I said, but I think the part's too small. I don't know if you'll do it. He's like, send it to me. I'll read it. And he was like, I'll do it. And then he called Pam. He's like, I'll do it. And every time I saw Pam, I was like, has he dropped out yet? I was sure that he'd be like, I'm not doing this, And I still can't believe that we got him. We got somebody of such enormous talent and passion and life. He has so much life, so much vitality, so much energy. It was kind of exactly what I had hoped for in that role. Yeah.
Right. I was wondering too. It's like, am I supposed to like him, or are we not supposed to like him? It was such a tough position for him to be in too.
I think that in the development of the script, that was a character we paid a lot of attention to, because I think I have enormous sympathy for John, and I didn't at all want that character to come off as sort of the foil of the insensitive husband who doesn't get it. So I'm glad you're confused about how to feel a little bit, because he doesn't know what to do.
Yeah, and what breaks my heart in that performance too is watching all the caretaking he's doing. When he helps put on her pants, when he orders things, when he says to her like, "No, this is not what you like this," But then when he finally says to Kristen, "You're a better man than I am," and he starts to cry, and you realize he can't do it. He can't watch it. It's too hard for him. He loves her too much, and he won't. And he'll go away before he'll see that.
Right. I think Anna had a little bit of that too.
Mm-hmm.
She had a little bit of that too.
Yeah.
It was just wonderful. I love the relationship between Lydia and.
And Kristen. The extraordinary Kristen Stewart, who I've known since she was 12 years old. Yeah, and she's not any different. She's still the same lovely, sensitive, intriguing, exceptional actress. And so has so much emotion at her fingertips, so much available to her. And we really had one of the things that she said that was so lovely in our rehearsal, we were talking, and she was like, I know what this is like. I have a mom. And it's true, because Kristen and I were talking, we said it's not that there's some huge divide. The divide is that she wants to be an actress, and I want her to go to college. So it's not that we don't love each other. It's just that I think I'm right, and she thinks she's right, and you watch them kind of come together.
Right.